Hello, everyone, and welcome to our event today. I'm Shirley Jeffries-Leach, and I head up the knowledge management team at Finmark Trust. I'd like to thank everyone for joining us today for this very exciting discussion on data analytics and for financial inclusion. The discussions we're going to be having are part of the WSBI Scale to Save program. And the WSBI will be publishing a paper that covers the content of today's discussion in more detail. This paper is being published against the backdrop of 4 years of research by the Scale to Save program into the needs of financial service providers that wish to serve the low-income segment of the market. In the most recent year, the main focus has been on ways to overcome these problems. The paper and content being discussed covers data analytics, but there are 5 other papers, and these include a paper on digitalization of financial services, supporting agriculture and rural farmers, as well as the types of inter-FSP partnerships that are conducive to inclusion. Mike, you can move to the So we've just got a few house rules that I'm just going to take you through. So we do have a lot of people joining us, and we're very pleased to have such a nice audience joining us. But because of that, we have created a setup so that no one will accidentally come off of mute and interrupt as people are focusing on their presentations. So everyone is muted by default, but that doesn't mean we don't want to hear from you. We really do want to hear from you. So you'll see that there's a Q&A section. If you're on a computer or a laptop, probably most likely on the bottom of your Zoom screen, where there's a little 2 dialog boxes that say Q&A. So if you click on that, you can post questions and we can respond to them as we go. And we will also be sharing the recording and presentations after the event. Mike, you can move to thanks. Okay, so just as a sort of overview of what we're going to be discussing today, my colleague Jaco Wederman is going to take us through a presentation on data and analytics as a tool. And then we will have some presentations from our FSP partners, followed by a panel discussion. So I'm actually going to hand over to Jaco to take it away.
Great, perfect. So what I'll do at this stage, just sort of help control the presentation a little bit, is I'll quickly pull up. Oh, I can't share while someone else is sharing. Mike, should I? There we go. Take over from here. So you should all be able to see my screen. I am very much hopeful. And now I can present for us. Great. So thank you all for taking some time out of your days to come and listen to what we actually have to share today. So as I mentioned, the work which we'll be presenting today actually forms, or as Shirley's mentioned, forms part of a 6 case studies that we've rolled out in response to what we've identified financial services providers need to access the low-income market. So in the first 2 years, 2018, 2019, we looked quite heavily at the state of retail and savings banking, and we wanted to really understand what is that state and what are the challenges that these FSPs face when we expect of them to be part of this sort of wave of inclusion and draw many of the young people in particular, but people of all walks of life within the retail financial services space on the continent into the formal system. Now, naturally, that doesn't happen easily, and there's many challenges identified. But today's is going to focus a little bit on those that are related to data analytics. What does that problem statement look like as the first thing we're going to talk about for the continent? So what have these FSPs said to us that made us react and produce this paper, which looks at how you can leverage data analytics to move further down market? We'll then talk a little bit about what can demand-side data analytics actually do for you. After that, we'll just take a note that not all markets are equal. So if you're an FSP sitting in a very data-rich market, for example, in South Africa, where the FinScope surveys are completed regularly versus somewhere it's only been completed once, for example, such as Burkina Faso. Those markets are quite different, but there is always something that you can do to get access to a bit more of this demand side data and to internalize it and help your institution derive some meaning from it. We'll then move over to presentations from the field. So as a part of this case study, we didn't just sit in an ivory tower and conduct research and desktop research. We actually made a point of engaging three of the WSBI members to hear what their experiences have been. So joined today, we have Zesco, or the Zambian National, I think it's a credit cooperative in Zambia. And we have the head of research joining us from there. From Awash in Ethiopia, I haven't seen our gentleman or our partner join yet, but is on the way and has confirmed participation. And then we'll also be talking a little bit about BRAC Uganda Bank Limited, or Booble in Uganda. They, for unforeseen circumstances, could not make the call today, but I will then present a little bit on their behalf. And after that, we'll move into a bit of a panel discussion where we can discuss some of these findings amongst ourselves. And at this moment, we will also be happy to take any questions from the floor. So as Shirley mentioned, please do ask them as we go along. And just say, for example, on the slide of, for example, the structured discussion slide, we have this question. Could you tell us a bit more about that? So without any further ado, I'm actually going to jump straight in. So to me, I thought two data points really justified why we think it's so important to look at this low income market in detail. The first is here on the right. So during the 2019 study that we completed, we interviewed all of the WSBI membership on the continent. We asked them a simple question. Do you view the low income market as viable? Is this a market you want to pursue? Is it going to be able to be profitable and sustainable for your institution? 53% of the WSBI members said, yeah, it's a highly viable market. And then a further 26% said slightly viable. The headline we take away from here is just over 79% of WSBI members in 2019 said, yeah, we want to participate in this market. For non-WSBI members, since we also wanted to test what that looks like outside of the membership, which is often retail and savings banks that naturally have a financial inclusion mandate. So then we went to ask microfinance institutions, as well as some other commercial banks that are not part of the membership, what their views were. They told us, well, 44% of us view this as a highly viable market. And then a further 44% of us view this as a slightly viable market. What I will say here is none of the people we interviewed here across our sample size of about 55 to 60 institutions were, if you want to think of them, the HSBCs of the world, the city groups, et cetera, that focus really on sort of serving the high net worth people, et cetera. These were retail and savings banks, so they would have a view on the mass market. And what we see that view is they want to participate in this market. So they view it as viable and something they can do. In all of those engagements we had with them, we asked them, why don't you move further down market? So you're indicating to us this is viable, but why aren't we taking it a little bit of a step further? And all of them said, well, there's various challenges, right? It's costly, they're difficult to access, but one that came out consistently is we don't always understand this market and there's scant information on it. And the information that we do have is based purely on our sort of supply side view. And also, which brings us to the second point, the second graph we have on here is we struggle to digest information that we have on this particular segment of the market. So another study that was commissioned by Finmark Trust and the Center for Financial Regulation, or CENFRI, together in, I believe it was about 2018 or so, was to look at over 300 FSPs on the African continent and to group them by those that have less than 5,000 clients, small FSPs, those with between 50 to 50,000 clients, and those with over 50,000 clients. And what we asked them is, do you have a dedicated data analytics function or team? Now, it doesn't have to be a fully fledged team. It could just be, I have a business intelligence officer that is responsible for data analytics. So yes, we do have someone that's responsible to be our data person, to help us make those sort of data-driven decisions and also to understand the data that's available in the low-income market. The key takeaway is that even for large FSPs, It's far from ubiquitous that someone is within that FSP dedicated to data analytics, and particularly for small ones that are so important for financial inclusion and pushing financial services more into the low-income market. You actually notice that it's not really there. So it's very easy for institutions to misunderstand the clients which they believe are so viable. One thing we didn't show on this slide, but that is also the case, is there's often this focus on our internal data, what information we have. And what we really want to sort of talk about, and we're getting to that in our next step, is to talk about what type of demand side information is there. Because sometimes I imagine executives sitting at FSPs might hear, oh, you want me to invest in IT to have the data neatly stored. This is going to be so costly. It's a headache, and they might shut down. That need not be the case. It could be as simple as appointing a person responsible for data analytics and pointing them in the direction of some of the demand side information that's available in the market. So now we're going to shift a little bit over to a focus on what can demand side data analytics particularly do, since this was really sort of the key thrust within our research focus note. And the idea behind this is it can give you sight of things that internal data cannot necessarily give sight of. One thing I want to stress is it is so important to use demand side data alongside internal and supply side data to come to a holistic and full view of the consumer, because there are things that demand side data can do that supply side data cannot, and vice versa, as we'll see on the next slide. The second thing I wanted to highlight is we'll be talking today principally about the FinScope surveys as a framework to sort of give information on what is covered. Now, it's important to note that FinScope is not the only survey available, but it is one of the most commonly surveys available, particularly in the African context at national level. There are, of course, others. I mean, I think, for example, in Mali and Senegal, if I'm not mistaken, there are household surveys that are run, and financial inclusion is a component of those. But without any further ado, why should an FSP or somebody wishing to go a bit further down market consider this sort of public demand side information to assist them? And the answer into that really lies in the sheer volume of information that's covered in the demand side surveys. So what I'm going to do is walk us through a little visual here that should give us an understanding of the philosophy behind how we go about collecting the data and creating it in such a manner that it can have these multi-purpose usages. We'll start here in the middle. So we've got our person. This is a human being. It could be you or me. It could be one of our relatives. It could be anyone. Now, all of us have needs, goals, and similar things. So if we speak just about goals, we could be saving for education, we could be preparing to build a house, start a business, we could borrow for that, we could save for that, we can do different financial services, use different financial services tools. But at the end, there's a goal we might want to achieve. We also might face shocks if we get sick. I mean, if we think of COVID, some of us might have to step away from work. Is there something that can be done during that time? Can we use savings? Is there insurance policies, et cetera, that can be used, et cetera, to deal with that? But that's before we even talk about financial services. Everyone has a need from time to time for a bit of support. The last one is liquidity. Now, no matter which market you work in, if you think you're a farmer, you often have these periods where you're paid a lot of money, and then you have to sort of manage it yourself for a couple of months. If you think of yourself like me, I receive a salary every day, and not every day. I wish it was every day, but I receive a salary every month and need to sort of match my liquidity. So there's these needs that people have at the heart of their sort of almost personhood. Now, after that, we can say, okay, but let's talk a little bit about who this person is, because that's going to have a profound impact on the needs which they exhibit. Are they an informal worker? Are they a farmer? Are they a salaried employee like me and some others I imagine are in here in this webinar, which forms that salaried group? Or are they perhaps dependents on some of us who are breadwinners, for example, students? Or are they self-employed? Once we have a view of this person, and we cover many more things than just where they work, but how regularly do you receive your income? In what format do you receive your income? Do you receive any sort of other perks as well? And we also then move on to understand the context within which they live. Here we've just mapped out 4 of them. So what's the household structure within which you live? Do you participate in financial services decision-making? What other sources of income does your household have, or perhaps you as well? And then we call here household insurance, but it's how does your household essentially deal with risk and random shock events? Is there sort of a community in place that will assist you? And only once we have this solid understanding of this person with which we want to engage, do we move into sort of the outer components of how does money enter into this person's life, and how does it leave, and for what purpose? Now, the advantage here is we don't just cover formal financial services. If we look at inflows, it's regular income, savings, credit, social assistance, but you can receive it face-to-face in cash, informally, via an ATM. Someone can send it to you via mobile money. You can engage in so many different ways for receiving your money, and you can look at it in so many mediums. It can be cash, sometimes it's in-kind services, people barter, and sometimes just digital financial services. The same thing can be said for outflows, or you lending, for example, to family and friends, and are you participating in informal savings, etc. So then we start to understand the financial life. And why this is so important is if we take just the South African example, in South Africa, we have near universal financial inclusion, almost 90%, I think, at the last FinScope survey. But we also have this incredibly thriving informal financial services setup, stokvels, people borrowing regularly from their local money lenders, etc. And that is information which exists for a client, which you are aware of. They're included in the formal system, but they have this whole life outside of that system. And this demand side information really gives you that comprehensive view of clients. Now, what can you do with this? So if you get a hold of this information and you appoint yourself an analyst, or you make it part of someone's KPIs, or you even set up a function if you're feeling particularly flush with cash, as one always thinks that FSPs and banks are, what can you do with it once you've actually started internalizing this information and analyzing it? The first is you can build really comprehensive target markets, which allow you to deliver tailored solutions. So if we think of the South African case, alone, we again mentioned that we have that super formalized market and everyone seems to have access. But what about your product and your solutions is not meaning that that target market is interacting with your formal financial services? Why are they going back to informality? And that brings us to the second point down here, is this type of data can very explicitly and very deliberately help you understand informality, which is something that formal financial services providers do not have sight of. And I think it might be a bit of a bold statement for me to make, and I'd be willing to debate with anyone afterwards, but across the continent, formal financial services continue to play a critical role in people's lives. And if we want to talk about bringing these people into a formal financial services system, we need to understand that. And that data can only really come from the demand side. It's difficult to find that anywhere on the supply side. Another thing is you can geographically refine and focus your resources, for example, for optimal client acquisition. This is something that BRAC Uganda Bank Limited, or BULO, has done quite well. And we'll talk a little bit about that when I share some of the insights we gained from our interactions and conversations with them. But essentially, the FinScope datasets are nationally representative, but often also regionally representative at sort of a more disaggregated space. And what this allows you to do simply is to say, well, let's build a profile for that region and a profile for this region. These people tend to be a bit more digitally illiterate. Those in the city, and for example, Kampala, we might want to tackle differently. So our strategy for acquiring customers and clients will be different. Now, when you do all of this, it comes together by allowing you to have all of these deep insights rooted in what's really going on with your customers as well as your non-customers. And this over time allows you to build strategies for the acquisition, retention, and possibly even cross-selling of products between different customer segments. Now, this is not to say that this is the only data source that allows you to do all of this, but when you use this data source alongside some of your internal data sources, this is some of the value it unlocks. And these are quite important if you're thinking of moving a little bit further down market. Now, before we jump into some of the examples of how this has been done successfully by FSPs such as Zesco, Awash, and BRAC Bank or BRAC Uganda Bank Limited. Let's just talk a little bit about your market and where you might fit in. Because I'm sure there's many of you in the audience thinking to myself, yeah, well, my market doesn't have as much data, or, well, I do have some data, but it's not that regular and it's outdated. How do I engage so that this process can sort of give meaning to me as well. Now let's start here on the left with markets that have little to no data. The first thing I'd push back is that almost no market has no data. It's typically a little data. For example, there will be some information in the census, some information in the household surveys that can give some understanding of this. But what you can do is you can leverage that data and commission a smaller study. I mean, the average FinScope cost can range anywhere from $300,000 to $700,000, depending on the country, its geography, its size, the sample size, all of these things. But you don't need to purchase a Ferrari. You can get a smaller study that just answers particular questions that you might need answered to understand, for example, informality in a particular segment and region. Another thing you can do is to engage with your associations to advocate for a study and its creation similar to this. The reason this matters is because it's often the associations that will drive home this type of work with government by saying, for example, our members could benefit from this. In the case of Botswana and a couple of other countries, you actually have even co-funding coming from governments, the associations, and others to sort of create this study, which is expensive together. And then the third point is to leverage market and census information. What I will mention here is this is really a journey. Even the most developed markets, which we'll speak about at the end, started here. And it really took a bit of grit and a bit of sort of pushing and advocating for these studies. In South Africa, the first FinScope was launched with buy-in from the Banking Association. And it's been through that buy-in that the value of the data has been made clear to other FSPs. And today, South Africa has a FinScope conducted every year. Now, we can move on to those that have what we call irregular market data. So this is where you might have a FinScope, a FinAccess survey, or an Access to Finance survey, or a household survey, but it's dated, it's not being done as sort of often as you might want for your own internal operational reasons. For example, updating your target markets, etc. Now, what you can do here is very similar to what you can do with the market with no data, but you go back to your institution and you articulate to them why this matters to you, what you've used it for, and where the update will provide meaning. And if you're prepared to do it, to say, well, we're prepared to step out and say we're dedicating $20,000, $30,000, $40,000, small amounts into this. And if you get sort of a couple of institutions coming together to dedicate that type of funding, you can start this and get it off the ground as well. So that is something that is quite important as well. The other thing you can do here is really work with other FSPs to help understand what they've benefited from it. If you're coming from a coordinating body like a banking association perspective. So if that's the seat you're occupying, you can engage with them to figure out what the usefulness of the data has really been. Now, this last one over here is where we have markets that have regular data. So an example of this is FinScope in South Africa, implemented every year at the request of the banks and the association. I mean, we also have, of course, government participating, National Treasury, which is the equivalent of our Ministry of Finance. But the key as to why it keeps being asked for regularly is because the data is heavily used, for example, for product design and sort of capturing new pockets of the South African market that you can't track via this formal ecosystem where you have all this transactional data and other. And the second thing is that the banks in South Africa have really gone a long way to building the analysis of FinScope into their business models. So there are strategy presentations which they get based off of this data to help them understand changes and shifts in market dynamics, etc. So depending on where you sit, if this is sort of data that you see as useful and you find useful, regular engagements with stakeholders around you can help sort of build momentum towards having more regular and reliable data for yourselves as well as for the market at large. At this stage, I'm actually going to continue on and move into the second part of our webinar for today and present on behalf of BRAC Uganda Bank Limited, who unfortunately, for circumstances beyond our control, could not join us for our discussion today. So what I wanted to mention about BRAC in Uganda is just sort of how successful they've been in acquiring clients. They started in 2006 with their first operations, and then in 2019 became a fully fledged bank. is when they changed their name to BRAC Uganda Bank Limited. Now, during this time, they've gone from essentially zero anything to 32 regulated branches and 132 satellite offices covering 84 districts of Uganda. So excellent coverage. They've got 161,000 borrowers, as well as 330,000 savers with them. So quite a sizable chunk of people, and 95 or so percent of their clients are women. So a great vehicle for the empowerment of women on the continent. Now, speaking about BRAC in particular, the reason I started with this slide is just to show a map of where they're all located. What we can't see that perfectly is this color for microfinance here, but you can see they're located across the sort of north. Here are several microfinance branches. There's a lot here in the southwest as well, well, the general sort of south of Uganda, and of course in Kampala, there's several branches. So this is actually quite important because BRAC wanted to be sort of close to the people that it served. Now, the way BRAC used data to support this strategy is to go and say, okay, I've got these geographically diverse clients. I've got this FinScope Uganda data set that's nationally representative, but also representative at regional levels, of which we've just heard there's 83 different regions. So can we not look at, for example, at sort of the bank level, create a little bit of a unit or an exercise where we analyze this data, but not at national level, at regional level, and provide support to these different branches for them to understand who are their clients? Where is penetration well below average? Where is BRAC's performance vis-a-vis other FSPs below average? Where are there pockets of informality? Which places are more likely to have mobile phones and be likely to work in a more tech-savvy space, which need a bit more, need a bit more engagement via, for example, outreach via agents. And then we can also say, well, where do we have different income levels? Which products are likely to appeal to whom? So they really use this as a, I don't know how better to word it, but business intelligence tool that allowed them to really understand the performance of the bank in this space. Now, what's very important to mention is, of course, this is not the only data that BRAC uses. It's not just about FinScope. They do use regulatory data as well as, for example, industry and competitor analysis, as well as government economic outlook information, so the Bank of Uganda information, and FinScope does not replace that. They also use internal management information system data, for example, customer performance, what's our retention looking like, how do our products look, what's being used the most, how are different branches performing. But this last part, this FinScope data, really allowed them to bring the consumer perspective to life in a way that isn't necessarily easy to do with all of that internal data. And the result has been, and it's a pity we didn't have the colleagues from BRAC on the call today, but the result has been excellent growth for BRAC in Uganda. And this is how they have leveraged the FinScope survey within their context to move further down market. At this stage, I think I'm actually going to come to a pause and introduce our next speaker to share a little bit of the experience that we've had in Zambia. So I'm going to introduce Dr. Patrick Chiweshe, who's the head of research at Zesco in Zambia and was our key counterpoint for this study. Patrick, it's great to have you with us. You can just let me know as soon as you're ready to move to any of the next slides, and I'll be happy to click on the next slide for you. Patrick, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Jacob. I'm happy to join the panel to just share a few insights about how data analytics has helped us to grow our segments, especially amongst the mass market group of our business. So I don't know if you share from there. So who are we? Basically, Zanaco is a universal bank, basically indigenous, founded in 1969. But much of our mass segment banking started recently in around 2008 when we started having our digital banking services being rolled out to our customers. And the key motivation for that was we were trying to look at means and ways of helping government achieve its financial inclusion agenda, as well as trying to cut costs on our part to make sure that we save as much as our clients away from traditional channels, which is brick and mortar. So what we've done is we've created our digital banking services arm, which now runs across the entire country. We, as a bank, we are the largest footprint bank, as you can see on that chart there. Our services are offered all across Zambia, and we have about 61 branches, 16,000 mobile agents, and these are basically meant to service our mass market clients. And we also have about 191 ATMs to also service our clients. Ownership, basically, we majority owned by Arise, which is an investment firm that has shareholders such as FMO, which is a Dutch development organization. It is also Arise is also owned by Rabobank. Now, so we can go to the next slide, Jacob.
Sorry, Patrick, would it be possible for you to put your video on as long as your bandwidth allows it?
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. So basically, our use of data analytics basically is involved in our product cycle, which is an 8-step cycle that we use to develop a product from inception to rollout, and also making sure that we do an evaluation of our services. So we have an 8-step process to design customer-centric products, basically using customer information as well as market information to try and create tailor-made solutions for our clients, so that we are able to make sure that we have maximum use of our services. So we have an in-house. I remember Jacob did mention that models about how you can use data analytics are different. You can use a third-party arrangement. You can use an in-house. For Zanaco, because we were scaling up at a relatively faster pace and having to handle a huge portfolio, they needed an in-house client base. And that's how the research team was set up in 2018 to just help with the data analytics part of our business. So we use a wide array of data, both qualitative as well as quantitative. We do rely on census data from our statistical agents. We also use qualitative data, which we do collect through surveys. We also use a lot of FinScope survey. Actually, for FinScope survey, for us to get more insights about the data and also to get ahead of our competition, we actually do second our staff to the FinScope project. Like last year, we had one of our members of staff who was working with a team that was collecting the data from developing the questionnaire, looking at what kind of questions are incorporated to dissemination of the information. And we also had access to information which also informed us in terms of how best do we respond to the changing trends in the market, who do we talk to, how do we behave in particular markets? Because Zambia is a very big country in terms of geography, and that also says something about how best you are going to service your clients. We can go to the next. So our 8-step process in terms of introduction of our services is that one, we have phase one. In phase one, basically is we conceive the product and we also do the planning of the product. So this is the most important step in which the research and analytics team do their work. So in this area, the team starts to collect information about particular markets, look at the demographics of our client base that we are trying to target, look at the size of the market, what kind of solutions that we need to provide, whether it's the market scalable or not. Then the next phase basically looks at phase two, which is designing the product, developing the product, as well as doing quality checks on the product, which is you take your product in UAT to just try and make sure that all the aspects of the products are okay. So in this stage, the research team is involved in developing M&D processes, which we later use to actually monitor the performance of the product on the ground. Then the final phase, which is launching the product, running the product, as well as retiring the product, and that comes in phase 3. So here, the research team basically is involved in monitoring and evaluation of the product, where we follow through with what is happening, trying to check whether the product that we launched does meet the specifications that are needed by our clients, as well as to see whether our product is standing out in the market and it's commanding the market share that we were envisaged. And once we evaluate and are comfortable or not comfortable, the product may actually be retired. Once we feel that the product is no longer meeting the needs of our clients, we retire it and we start the process again to come up with new products that are able to meet the needs of our customers. We can go to the last slide, I think. So our conclusion basically is that data analytics is key to creating value and offering customer-centric products. And this is very, very important, especially when you're dealing with the mass market. Suppose sometimes one product fit or may not work. You may want to customize certain solutions, which are by following unique trends in particular segment of your market. For example, Zambia is a very huge country, and we have about 10 provinces, and you may find that the social and economic characteristics of these regions are different, and you really need to look at what kind of products are suitable to offer in a particular area, and how best do you make sure that your customers get a benefit of value for the services that you are offering. So the key lessons that we've learned so far include that demand side data is very useful for product design, especially in the early stages, because it will be very costly for you to create a product or a service that it gets rejected at inception, and that would be time wasting, and you could lose a lot of time. The second one is that demand side client data combined with internal data helps in understanding changing customer needs and helping to benchmark products against competition. So using the client demand side data as well as our own internal data, that has helped us over the years to respond to the changing needs of our customers, and also to provide tailor-made solutions for various segments of our customers. Finally, proactive market studies can help provide meaningful data and also help you to either scale up or scale down. So what we usually do, myself and my team, is that once in a while, we do carry out sector-specific studies or regional-specific studies to understand the key challenges that our products are facing on the ground, so that we are able to see whether we need to adjust or we need to bring in more ideas into our products to make them user-friendly and to make sure that we can reach as much of our client base as possible. Thank you very much. That's our experience with demand side data and how helpful it is whenever we actually create, or whenever we are offering products to our clients. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Patrick, for sharing this very insightful presentation. If there's any questions for Patrick, please do park them in our questions and answer session, and we will be sure to answer them once we get to the panel section. I've just noticed that I think our colleagues from AWASH are having some technical difficulties connecting. So what I'm going to do is just share an overview of what AWASH has achieved in the case of Ethiopia. So Ethiopia is obviously, and for those that know, it's currently in the throes or the midst of an opening up of its retail financial services sector. So the government is sort of opening it up and creating more opportunities. And it's sort of moving in that direction. What AWASH Bank did within this is it went and leveraged two principal sources of information. The first was the census information that we've just heard that Patrick also uses for his team in Zambia. This gave him a general lay of the land, and what they were looking for is flows of people in and out of Ethiopia. I mean, Ethiopia is a very large, very populous country with a very large diaspora. So that's the first sort of component they latched onto to see, well, there seems to be quite a significant target market here. We don't have a nationally representative survey, but our census tells us that there's a lot of people abroad that have needs for sending money back, etc. To then understand a little bit more of what it is these people need, and in the absence of a nationally representative survey, AWASH Bank actually went out of its way to participate and support some of the expat forums that are often held in Addis Ababa or in Ethiopia itself. And the idea behind these forums is really for the diaspora to lift out what some of their needs were. And what AWASH Bank picked up here is from the, as we mentioned, from the census information, there's this big population, but it actually splits nicely into two parts. There are those that have every intention of returning to Ethiopia in the future. And there are those that do not, that have decided they're immigrating and they're going to be spending the rest of the world, at least a significant chunk of their lives outside of Ethiopia. Now, the needs of these two population groups are quite distinct. For example, those that intend to return often want mortgages, which they can pay in Ethiopia, even though they live abroad. So that requires the creation of one particular solution, where the other solution is for those that want to remit, support family members, perhaps their children who are being educated. So those are two very distinct needs that emerge from these two distinct target markets. And AWASH, in the absence of having more granular information, really used that qualitative engagement to discover what do these groups need. Now, fast forward a little bit, and it's a pity the representative from AWASH is not able to present this in their own words. The outcome of this was that this became quite a big foreign exchange earner. In other words, a business line for the bank. And this is how they earn a large degree of their foreign exchange. It became quite a profitable endeavor for them, particularly via offering mortgages, which can then be repaid from outside of Ethiopia. And of course, the reason this was so advantageous to Awash is because they were ready before anyone else was. They'd been looking at this data and they'd been engaging this segment of the target market quite a lot before they dove in once the regulations were liberalized. So they were very ready to go. And that just to me highlights the power of having all of this data, particularly demand side data and understanding of what consumer needs are in place, because it enables you to act nimbly and quickly. So at this stage, we're going to just move over to a panel discussion. What we had done here is we had prepared sort of 2 talking points for each of our participants. I'll field the ones for BRAC and Zesco, and then we can possibly, Zesco will be fielded by Patrick, and then we can possibly go to any open questions that might be in the chat box. So starting out with BRAC, one of the key questions we were wondering is, what was the point of this regional segmentation that was completed by BRAC? And the real outcome of this was it rapidly allowed them to acquire new customers, because it understood where the pockets of lower financial inclusion were, what that sort of what were the drivers behind that level of inclusion, and how could you at a local level respond to that. So instead of having sort of a one-size-fits-all strategy for acquiring and onboarding customers, this allowed BRAC to create a much more nuanced strategy for the internalization of further customers. And the second question, which I thought was quite important, is what are the risks of using this type of data? I mean, using the FinScope data or other types of data. And in my mind, there are really 2. The first is you become dependent on that data source. So the FinScope survey in Uganda is completed, say, once every 3 to 5 years or something similar to that, because it is expensive and it takes time to fundraise for something like this. Now, if you're dependent on that, it means you can't necessarily update all of your indicators as quickly as you may want to. That's the first, the first challenge. And the second one is a lot to do with building the analytics capacity. So what you have to do is you have to make sure that you have these indicators internally and that you can quickly and rapidly update them. What you'll often see is perhaps sometimes the FinScope questionnaires, or if you're using something else like a household survey questionnaire that was recently completed in Uganda and also completed a financial inclusion element, you may find the definitions don't always line up for tracking. So those are 2 of the sort of risks that come about with a little bit of infrequent data use. Having said that, the data is so incredibly rich that I think it should be used. What we've understood from BRAC in Uganda is that they will continue to use it, but those are just sort of 2 of the potential risks. Now turning to a question for Zesco, I was curious, you participated in the FinScope rollout in Zambia. Can you tell me a little bit more about what that experience was like for Zesco and what it meant to participate in the survey, maybe for other FSPs that are located within countries like this that were thinking, well, hey, maybe I should find a way to participate. Can you share with us a little bit of what that meant for Zesco and how it looked?
Thank you very much. I think one of the biggest benefits that we received was just being able to be part and parcel of the journey from inception to the completion of the survey, and also having the first hand-on access to the data that was actually being used in the completion of the study, and that, in one way or another, it gave us a deeper understanding than any other post. Our participation in the data collection, how it was collected, how the survey instruments were created, you are better able to understand the responses that are coming out of the data, and you would be very, very different from someone who didn't participate in the process. So you find that that really helped us to first understand the data and have the access to the data. And it also helped us to customize the data to our own needs.
Great. I think the participation of somebody within the survey, as you've mentioned, really just helps you understanding, because you can go to them and say, well, where were there any problems in sampling, etc. And I think that is such a valid point. The second question we had for you was, where do you see in broad strokes sort of the future of data analytics going in Zesco within your unit as you sort of support the broader strategy in this 8-step process? That you've described to us. So what are you thinking of comes next? I mean, if we think of the FinScope surveys, are there additional things you'd want to include? Are there other surveys you'd like to use, more ways to use internal data? But yeah, just sort of a blue skies question as to where you think the future of data analytics at Zesco is heading or should be heading.
Yeah, thank you very much. I think over the last 4 years that we've been providing this service to the bank, myself and my colleagues, has been that we've actually been seeing more and more interest in data analytics, and more of our colleagues in the operating business departments are getting more and more to rely on us to provide insights on their area of operations, and also to just help them with regards to economic intelligence, social intelligence in the rollout of the various products that the bank is offering. It's not only at the mass market level. I think data analytics is moving into the next phase where pretty much of our product offering will depend on it, especially with the shift in terms of financial services provision from brick and mortar to digital based, because most of the banks are trying to scale down mortar and brick kind of service delivery to digital. And for you to be able to provide customized services, you should be able to find a way and means of understanding emerging trends from the use of your products, so that you are able to respond adequately and also be able to develop solutions for your clients that are user-friendly and also speak to their problems. Because for a long time, the biggest problem has been you develop solutions which don't speak to the people, and they end up not using the services. And you actually find that as a country, for example, as a country, you are struggling to reach financial inclusion targets. Why? Because the financial service providers are providing a service that does not speak to the needs and requirements of your clients. So the future of data analytics is very bright, and I'm seeing a very strong demand for services of data analytics, and as well as data analysts going forward.
Excellent. Thank you so much. I think we will skip over the questions for Nurfeta just because he's not with us at this point. We have 3 questions I see in our chat log. One, I think, is of benefit to everyone. So is it possible to access these demand-side FinScope surveys for research? Any insight on the access policy and ways of getting them will be very useful. So this person is interested in understanding the role of mobile money for inclusion and marginalized groups in Africa. So to say yes, these surveys are most certainly publicly available. The only exception is the South African survey because of its syndicated nature. But other than that, most certainly all of these surveys are available at on our website, framework.org.za, national surveys. You may find that some surveys, I'm going to pick on the case of Zambia, are not yet uploaded. Part of the reason behind this is we haven't yet received that data for upload from FSD Zambia, who's our local implementing partner, but that data will be available. The second question we have here is South Africa undertakes a FinScope survey every year, and we're curious to know if a year's data insights are useful to policy interventions in ecosystems. And I think this is an absolutely excellent question. If you ask the same question repeatedly over many years, you can maybe notice slight trends. And is there really meaning in asking the same question a year later? Now, the FinScope process in and of itself, one of the most important things to note about it and other similar processes, that it's not static. If we notice, for example, that there's a new theme which we really do want to explore, we include that as an additional module. For example, if we decided that in the South African context, it's incredibly important to explore some of the issues we've been having with funeral insurance, because we've seen a lot of people have unfortunately passed away from COVID. We can include a module within the survey that does not necessarily compromise the remainder of the survey, where we can actually ask questions around this and surface that information out. So the survey in itself is not static. There are components, of course, that are, so we can track headline indicators of financial inclusion yearly. But after that, we also have an opportunity to change what's in the survey. So the survey process in and of itself as a tool for lifting out and surfacing insights that are meaningful for different stakeholders, regulators, policymakers, as well as FSPs, does actually take place within the process. So it is useful, but only if it's sort of applied intelligently. Otherwise, as our anonymous attendee doesn't necessarily suggest, but what it would mean is you'd be running the same thing over and over again with little change in between, and may not get such good value for money. So that question I'm going to mark as answered at this stage. We've got a question from Brian for Patrick, and I'll just read it out. Patrick, thanks for the presentation. And Wizit was very proud to work with Zesco with the launch of Zapit, which was a great success. How are you going to use data to launch soft pause in the market, which will be a game changer in Africa, focusing on the SME market and enabling them to accept digital payments? So unfortunately, I'm not too clued up on Wizit or any of these informations. Patrick, do you feel comfortable fielding this question, or should we mark this as one we can answer offline?
Yeah, I think my only response to that is that I think for any type of service that you give, data analytics and trends are very, very important in terms of trying to understand the needs of your customers and also what kind of services. And so, of course, is something that is increasingly becoming a trend in most emerging market economies. And I see it taking root. It has been taking root already, I think, down here. And it's seemingly, it's more acceptable by most of merchants in terms of accepting payments and all for goods and services, as opposed to other forms of digital services. So going forward, I think I'm sure by the next few years, we should be able to receive much more data in terms of trends of what is happening with soft pause, the adoption rates, how is it being adopted by our clients, who are the most likely people to receive it, because you need the data on gender, you need the data on age, and so that you are able to target which kind of clients are likely to use this type of service as opposed to other customers. So you need to segment that. So essentially, clearly there is a role for data analytics for you to be able to offer a quality service to your customers. Like I said earlier, before we launch a new product, what we usually do is in our areas where we offer our services, we'll do what we call a baseline survey, especially for the mass segment, so that we are able to measure the outcome let alone, and be able to see whether our service is having an impact or not. So clearly, even in the case of soft pause, especially in the far-flung areas, it will be very critical for us to look at the pre-trials of our the baseline survey. Sorry, not pre-trial, the baseline survey, and then try to see whether we are having an impact or not. I think that would be my best answer to that.
Excellent. I've got another question here. It's posted in our chat box. Allocating sufficient resources to data analytics and research appears to be an issue in FSPs. Could we share how many of the staff members form part of the research team and how often do they engage with other departments to discuss data insights? I can venture a quick response from Brack, since I know we've had this discussion. I think the team is comprised of about 4 people, the business intelligence unit or business development units. And what they do is they put all these data sources together, regulatory, FinScope, and other data sources regularly, and send reports out systematically to the various sort of local sort of operating centers, if you want to call it that, so that they can leverage that in their branch engagements with their customers, etc. So there's a team of about 3 to 4 that's dedicated to this function within the case of Uganda, but the question was actually directed to you, Patrick. So maybe you could share with us a little bit about how your unit supports the rest of Zesco with data analytics and insights, etc. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you very much. So we have a team of 3 researchers, including myself. So what we do is for day-to-day work, we carry out various analysis, insights, and every week we do provide some insightful trends to our colleagues in the business. And then once in a month, we do have a webinar like we are having now to just share what emerging trends we are seeing, especially for products that have already been launched. Are we seeing penetration? Are we retreating? And what could be the reasons for the retreat? We do share that on a monthly basis. And then we do also have a general discussion of economic trends, which is also done once a month to just share the insights of why certain products may not be selling. Is it economic, or is it that the product is not designed to meet the needs of the target population? So we do have those discussions on a monthly basis. And then other engagements comes through direct contacts from the various divisions who approach us for specific issues that they would want us to assist with. So that's how we do interact with our colleagues in the business.
Excellent. We've got 2 more questions coming through. It seems like we've got quite a lively chat box. FMT surveys seem to be geared towards individuals. Can the same data be useful when addressing the SME market and its needs, or do you have another dedicated set of tools? So my answer will be twofold. The first is yes, there is another dedicated set of tools, the MSME survey, which is run specifically on MSMEs. So as opposed to focusing on consumers and then being the respondent is the MSME. These are not as widely available yet as the FinScope surveys. The second part is within the FinScope surveys themselves, you are able to see who is an MSME owner by asking them, what is, for example, your primary source of income? And they can see, I own a small business, or perhaps I'm hawking, or you can sort of pull it out from the sources of income question and create segments for those that are MSME owners or similar. Having said that, it is not a supplement for the MSME survey, since they're dealing with 2 different universes and the questions are sometimes somewhat different. So these do exist as well. Now we have another question from some of our followers that are following us on other channels. Patrick, this one is for you. They want to know what innovations and solutions have the team sort of been able to come up with the help of sort of data analytics, if you wanted to or were willing to share any of those. Of course, that's asking you for sensitive information, but please share whatever you feel comfortable sharing.
Okay. I will not be able to share the full details, but what I can say is I think over the last 4 years, what has happened is that in collaboration with our colleagues in the business, we've been able to launch products that have really been successful. I think one of the participants did talk about the Zapit solution that was launched, and which is the one of the largest digital solutions that is offered in Zambia for the mass segment of our market, and it's very popular. Like I mentioned earlier, we have about 2.7 million customers on that platform alone, which clearly shows its success. And basically, each formulation was based on understanding the client needs, having targeted interventions, which, as usual, the way we start our product rollout, the way we do, we use our 8-step product development cycle. We went through first understanding the market, understanding the clients at the product conception, and then we've followed up with understanding the key trends that are emerging and trying to add more and more customer solutions to the already existing solutions that we give our customers, especially in the mass market. We launched our first online credit solutions for our clients, which we started last year, and the response has been very, very good. And we are hoping to scale it up this year so that many of our clients can actually be able to access loans without having to take a lot of time to reach out to the bank. Because what we had realized is that also the cost of access to service was a big hindrance in terms of people utilizing financial services. So we said, okay, what can we do to help our clients? And that's how the online credit solution was added to the Zapit solution, and that has been able to we've been able to increase credit access for SMEs and micro institutions. That would be my response to that.
Perfect. Looking just at our chat, it looks like we've almost come to the end of our questions. I think there's just one thing to share here as well, since we are in the space of sharing data and information. We have a message from Anne-Marie Swinderen saying that for the audience, WSBI and Scale to Save did develop a toolkit for Nigeria, for those of you who are based in that market or interested in it. And there's a combination of financial inclusion survey and financial diaries within that toolkit. They indicated to please feel free to connect with Lift-L-IFT for the financial inclusion diary data, and that you might be able to use this as well in the development of any further products or services. With this, I just want to pause and...
Sorry, I'm not sure if you missed one or if I missed you mentioning that one. There's one there in the chat that was posted from the YouTube channel from Rachel Tina. Did you mention that one to Zanaco?
Oh, yes. So for Zanaco Bank, how would you describe, sorry, I missed this, Patrick. This is another one for you. How would you describe your structure? Is data analytics centralized and therefore conducted within your team, or is data analytics also conducted by other teams within Zanaco? So is it a centralized or distributed function?
Okay, thank you very much. So the research services are centralized, but we do have colleagues in various units who also do data analytics. But what happens is that the work that is done by our colleagues in particular units is communicated to us, and we do the collaboration to make sure that we have a common understanding. But the structure is such that the research team is centralized and provides the service to each and every unit. And then we work in collaboration with particular units when it comes to data analytics as well as conducting research. So what would normally happen is that a request can come through with regards to a particular topic that they would want to have a look and understand, and then would sit down with them to see how best a solution can actually be provided. So you may find that some of the analysis actually happens in the divisions, but in most cases with a bit of oversight from our units. So that's how it is structured.
Perfect. I just want to give anyone else a moment to add any other questions they might have for us before we move to conclusion. We're actually doing quite well for time, right on track. Any further questions from anyone else at this stage? No? Then I think we can start talking about just a couple of sort of concluding remarks almost. The first thing I just want to say here is this is not the only case study we've created. This one focuses purely on data analytics. They're designed to be short reads. They're not designed to be highly technical or scare you. But we have one on data analytics, supporting farmers, and some successful case studies of developing digital platforms for them. We have one all about digitalization of the banking business model, so not just your channels, but as an institution to become more digital. We also have one on the mobile phone and how it's just simply revolutionizing the way financial services work and are conducted. And then we also have a great one on partnerships, since many of the FSPs told us, well, you know what, we're all racing down market, duplicating infrastructure. Maybe there's a way we can collaborate. And that helps you understand as an FSP when to collaborate with someone and when to view them as rivalrous, so that you can really expand your value offering and actually reach that low income market. You can reach all of these studies at this address here, scale2save.wsbi-esbg.org. And we will, of course, include this in the mailing list that we send out. I also wanted to just sort of give a special shout out and particular thank you to ADA in Luxembourg, as well as the European Microfinance Platform, for helping us make some noise around this webinar and getting everybody excited about it. Thank you very, very much. If our two representatives from these organizations are here, we very much appreciate your collaboration. And lastly, please do reach out on LinkedIn, social media, or anything else if you'd like to connect for any sort of future questions, collaborations. No problem whatsoever. And if you're curious about the data that Finnmark Trust has, Finnmark Trust as a financial sector deepening trust and obviously a non-profit entity is always welcome to sort of always keen to share the data that is available. So please do get in touch with us, and if we can, we will share the data with you directly or provide you to a link where you can reach it. Thank you very much for taking the time to attend our webinar today. And I hope that everybody else has a great day forward. And our apologies that one of our speakers could not make it today. Thank you very much. And that brings me to the end. Shirley, I don't know if you wanted to add anything, any concluding or closing remarks, or otherwise I think we're finished.
Thank you, Jaco. Yeah, you did this was very interesting, and we appreciate your input and the input from the panel. But yes, thanks everybody for joining, and we can say goodbye.
Great. Thank you, everyone. And the recording, documents, and all of this will be circulated to everybody on the mailing list, including those that didn't attend, so that they have this information available